Hi, my name's Richie. I'm a teacher here in Las Vegas. I've been watching all your debates, and the big thing when I talk to you or talk to other teachers about you, they go back to that good schools comment that you made. I know what you meant by it and what good schools are, but people hear charter schools, when they're public school teachers, they get scared. What do you think charter schools in the Department of Education looks like in your administration?
Thanks for being a teacher. What level do you teach? Do you teach in this school?
No. I teach 7th grade English.
So you'll be happy to know you're in good company. I'm going to list the 5 top professions of people that have contributed to the campaign, the hundreds of thousands of Americans who've donated. Number 1 is teacher, which is awesome. And I may be getting the order slightly wrong. So number 1 is teacher, number 2 is software engineer, number 3 is retail worker, number 4 is driver, and number 5 is warehouse packer or fulfillment center worker. So these are the professions that are closest to the ground in many of the issues we're talking about. For teachers, to give you a sense as to what my priorities would be as president, I'm a very data-driven person, and the data shows a number of things. First, it shows that we should be paying teachers more, because a good teacher is worth his or her weight in gold. And that's not a feel-good thing, that's just educational outcomes. Number 2, we need more teachers, because the data also shows that a higher teacher-to-student ratio is very good for our kids. Number 3, we need to de-emphasize the SAT and the standardized tests that are actually putting teachers in the spotlight. When we feel like you have to teach for the test. You all know that we invented the SAT during World War II as a means to figure out which kids not to send to the front lines. Did you know that? And now we treat every year like it's wartime for our kids. It's very dark. It really does not make any sense. And if you're an educator, you know that sometimes you're doing something that you know is not ideal for the classroom because you're like, oh, right, I guess I have to go teach the test. I've been there. The other big thing that the data show is that 2/3 of our kids' educational outcomes are determined outside of the classroom. This is parental time with the child, words read to them when they're young, stress levels in the household, type of neighborhood. So we're holding teachers like you, what's your name again?
Richie.
We're holding teachers like Richie to an impossible standard where we're saying, educate our children, educate our children. And then Richie knows that he can control approximately 1/3 of the kids' educational outcome, and the 2/3 are happening at home. So what we should do is we should put money into the families and the parents' hands to improve the kid's environment at home, to give that child a real chance to learn when he shows up to school, and then give our teachers a better chance to teach. That's the best thing we can do for educators. In terms of charter school versus public school versus the rest of it, I have friends who are incredible public school teachers, I have friends who are incredible charter school teachers, and my comment was simply that, look, you can't take an entire category of hundreds of schools that have thousands of teachers working among them and just categorize them and say, these are bad, these are good. There are good schools of every type in these communities around the country, but the data I'm talking about is universal and it doesn't matter what type of school you're in. Find another person. Let's try to go man, woman, Ed. You did that. Excellent.
Hi, I'm B. I'm a nurse here in Las Vegas. There are now algorithms and softwares that are collecting data to determine how many patients I should have based on trends and profit projections. There are a lot of states that have passed ratio laws, nurse-to-patient ratio laws. How do you feel about that process? Are you willing to support a movement to get that done federally?
In other words, you want more nurses per patient because it's impossible for a nurse to look after
what it is right now is that staffing is kind of based on whether or not you're rural or urban, right? There's a lot of rural hospitals that have a lot of trouble with staffing because they don't have the manpower.
Yeah.
But an ICU patient in the Midwest is just as sick as an ICU patient on the East Coast.
Yeah.
So those nurses really suffer. So 3 ICU patients is a really difficult assignment, no matter where in the country you take it.
I see nurses and clinicians roles similar to teachers, where we have to try and free you up to do your job. It's possible that there's like one ICU patient, and that patient could be incredibly time intensive and laborious, and signing arbitrary ratios to me seems a little bit like heavy-handed and top-down. So I want to try and free clinicians up to actually use their judgment. To me, one of the most unfortunate things in American life today is that we don't trust anyone. You know what I mean? We're like, the most extreme is if you're in an Amazon fulfillment center, they just like treat you like you're a robot, and if you like fall behind in productivity, like literally you have a wristband that beeps. You guys know this? Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah. So that's the most extreme. But then the same is true even among clinicians and nurses and teachers, where we don't seem to trust you to do your job. Again, like there's this test where it's like, hey, you don't do this, you're not doing your job. So what you're saying is 100% right, that it's not like we should be changing the responsibilities of nurses based upon what type of community they're in. We have to have relatively objective patient standards that apply across state lines or between urban and rural areas. One thing I'm very passionate about is that we have 30% of the country that's a primary care desert, where you just can't get access to primary care unless you drive for like hours and hours across state lines. And in many ways, it's an emblem of what's gone wrong in America, is that our healthcare system right now serves the almighty dollar above all else. I mean, we're spending twice as much as other countries on our healthcare to worse results because the system is not designed to make us healthy or strong. The system is designed to maximize revenue for the private insurance companies and the device manufacturers and the drug companies. To some extent, the hospitals, it's like there's a whole set of different operating models that hospitals have, so it varies from facility to facility. That set of incentives is what's driving us all crazy. When I talk about technology, I talked to 70 CEOs in New York and I asked them how many of you are looking at replacing back office workers with software. Guess how many hands went up out of 70? All 70. Fact is, you could fire that CEO if he wasn't looking at replacing those workers. Those are the incentives we've set up. In the hospital, the incentives for the administrator are like, hey, we need to maximize throughput, so if you're a nurse and you haven't seen enough patients, then we need to make sure you dial it up because you have productivity numbers you need to hit. It's the same perverse set of incentives. I'm sure it makes being a nurse much less enjoyable because then you're like, oh, I can't dawdle with this patient. I can't give them a little extra TLC because I have to go run and see another patient. And that's the inhumanity of our system that I would love to change fundamentally. And the way to change that is by freeing professionals like you to do your jobs the way you see fit, and have a system that's designed upon making people stronger and healthier. So if you spend a little bit of extra time with a patient, just trust that you're actually trying to make that person stronger and healthier, not trying to hit some arbitrary productivity number that's driven by the bottom line. Thank you, B. Let's get